Hello, BookTube. Welcome back to my channel. I am reporting from an undisclosed location, and I am here with one of my BookTube besties, Mark from Book Time with Elvis. We're back again, and today we're here to talk about the Manchurian Candidate. And I guess, Mark, I'm going to start with you, just kind of your overall experience with this book, because you haven't seen the movies. You didn't even really know what the book was about because, I mean, going into the book, you thought it was something completely different. So I'm just going to let you just kind of talk a little bit about your experience there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was a massive surprise. And as you said, I didn't really know what it was about. I don't know why, but somewhere in my mind, I had it that it was a book that was going to be about some kind of COVID-esque pandemic. I mean, I appreciated, of course, it predated that. It's much older. But I thought it was like some kind of epidemic or something that was released due to experiments or something done by like Chinese scientists. I don't know. I had no idea what it was about. And as I started reading it, I then did. Is it really noisy? It's very noisy for me.
It's pretty noisy. Elvis is really on a tear this morning.
You can see him.
I love it. I love it. Having a good time that way.
Yeah, he only does it when this happens. So, yeah. So yeah, I had no idea what it was about, and I must say, it was one of those really pleasant surprises. In that it was, not only was it well, the funny thing is actually when I read the blurb, like when I started thinking this isn't about, some kind of epidemic, I thought, the premise sounds a bit PG-13, right? The premise sounds a bit pants. Can I say that? That's PG-13, isn't it? Rubbish. There we go.
Yes.
The premise sounds a bit, really like, I don't know, cliched stupid, really. I thought, yeah. But it's well written. It's kind of got, a few literary like references that surprised me. And it's a really engaging story. It's a real page turner. And it was just an overall very pleasant surprise and fun and engaging reading experience. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. I'm so glad because I was so excited to read this book, and I don't have it with me right now, but
yeah, because you have a special copy, don't you?
I do. I have a first edition, and that was a birthday gift, Christmas gift, I think birthday gift from my husband. So that was a really, really special gift. I had looked at this book for a long time. The cover, if you have not seen,
is it the one on the thumbnail?
Cover, yes, it's the one on the thumbnail. That cover, I don't know, something drew me to it. I think there's a whole lot going on in this book that appeals to me as far as like Cold War, espionage, corrupt governments, there's so many things. And, with my JFK, fascination, it kind of fits in line with my fascination with that. So yeah, I was drawn to this book. I'd seen the film, wanted to read it. So I'm so glad that you read it with me. It's always a joy to read with you, Mark. You're the, hold on, I have a prepared statement. Mark is the warmest, kindest, bravest, most wonderful human being I've ever met in my life.
Oh, that's really very sweet and kind of you. Right back at you. Thank you.
Does it sound familiar, people? Because it's from the book too, remember?
Yeah, that's right.
I do mean all of those things about you, Mark. You are quite warm, kind, and wonderful. But yeah, I
can't remember. Is that said about Raymond or it's said about Marco?
It's said about Raymond. So
from Marco, was it though?
Yeah, Marco and everyone in the unit, they just would automatically say this, and then they would have this look on their face, like in the film, like where did that come from? But it was sincere, but they didn't really know where it came from. Of course, we find that out, but
I suppose we're assuming that everybody knows like the story, everybody except me. But I
Yeah,
mean,
they do
should we
not. They
maybe
do
say
not.
a
So
little
let
bit about what it's
yeah, we
about?
should. We should. So um essentially this book is set in the Korean War. So Richard Condon wrote it in 1959 and it's set during Korea. A group of soldiers are captured. They're kind of set up by their Korean interpreter, and they're captured by this group of Soviet and Chinese actors. I
Scientists,
don't,
really, aren't
yes.
they? I mean,
Yeah, there's like psychiatrists, scientists, obviously some military brass in there. So it's a very interesting group. I think the Chinese psychiatrist is from a group called the Pavlov Institute.
yeah.
So there you go. Essentially, they are going to use, um, mind control to develop an assassin. And
Hmm.
they're going to set this assassin up as a Medal of Honor winner. So when these gentlemen are dropped back into, the battle lines, they will come out with this story of heroism for Raymond Shaw. He pretty much saved their unit. And he's going to win the Medal of Honor. So they have these memories of this event kind of implanted in their head that Raymond Shaw is this big hero. But there are some kinks in it, right? Because it is the human brain. So, it's not that simple, is it? And so some of these guys will come back from Korea and they will have very vivid nightmares. And in these nightmares, Raymond Shaw is not a hero. He is someone who has been brainwashed and he has killed two of the people in their unit that they thought died in action. And now he's being set up as an assassin to do what? We don't know. It is a massive communist plot. The specter of communism is just all over the cover of this book and in this book. And I just absolutely loved it.
I mean, my
So,
favorite flaw, when you mention the flaws of the human brain, my favorite is actually the way Raymond Shaw can't retell the story of his winning the Medal of Honor in anything other than the future tense.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, as he's been told that this is what's going to happen, you will do this. So he repeats, "I will do this, I will do that," and that's all he can ever do. He can't ever say it like in the past tense. So it's kind of an interesting thing there, you know.
yeah,
So
very
yeah.
interesting. Do you want to say hello to a couple people in the chat? I've got Stephen Corey always showing up with a food order. And Cool Gamer, hello. And
Hey,
Kevin,
Kevin.
good to see you. Um, so yeah, this book, like you said, it's one of those premises that could be super hokey, um, but it was so well done. I mean, like there was kind of a literary quality to it, and I did like the fact that Marco, Colonel Marco, or Major Marco, I think he becomes a
Oh,
major.
Colonel,
Um,
he becomes.
oh, Colonel, okay. He is quite a reader, and so there are some literary references there, and um, yeah, I liked that. I was a bit shocked um, by how salacious some of this book was and how taboo, because I was already familiar with it having seen the films. Like I've seen the 1962 version with Frank Sinatra, which is my favorite. I've seen that a ton. And then I've seen the 2004 version with Denzel Washington and Meryl Streep. I've seen that twice. And yeah, so I was already familiar with it, but I'm just here to tell you this book really pushes some boundaries. Um, were you shocked by that as I was, Mark?
Well, yes, because I'm a big prude, and these things really do shock me. No, well, yes. The funny thing is, like, there was a moment, I think near the very beginning, when he beds that reporter woman, doesn't he?
Yeah,
Um, and I laughed because I thought it was quite tame. I actually even highlighted it. because it says, what is it? At 7:20 on the morning after he had reached Saint, is it? I never know. Is it St. Louis or St. Louis? St. Louis. St. Louis. St. Louis.
If you hadn't asked me, I could tell you.
Yeah,
You know
St.
that once
Louis.
you hear
It's St.
someone say
Louis.
St. Louis, Missouri, yeah.
Yeah, St.
It,
Louis, Missouri, isn't it? Not St. Louis. So reached St. Louis. There was a discreet but firm knocking at Raymond's hotel room. These preemptory sounds just happened to come at a moment when Raymond was exchanging intense joy with the young newspaper woman he had met the day before. And I thought that was kind of like a bit kind of fun, innocent way of, saying that they were doing stuff, right?
yeah.
And then, of course, as you read on later, there's not so much innocence in the way it's done. And it's quite, well, I remember being really surprised reading The Big Sleep by Chandler, in the 30s. And that's quite risque. And this, of course, is the 50s. And it's still like, when you think of like, TV is like My Three Sons or, something like this, which is all kind of like, never would Fred McMurray sit down and tell his boys, the facts of life probably, and this kind of stuff. It kind of shocked me, that the book's written in that era. And it had almost like quality of the kind of swinging 60s about it, really, with the whole kind of orgies in the flat kind of thing that was going on. So yeah, it was interesting. I mean, it was really. I mean, it was just. Yeah, I don't often go as blindly into books as I went into this. So the fact that it did turn out to be such an enjoyment really was a bonus. Yeah, and the fact it was well written too, because it could so easily have been like, honestly, if you had asked me before, like, given the premise maybe, and guess what I kind of thought about the book, I would have thought it would have been like a contender for this, like a garbage August or whatever it's, Garb August read, but no, it's not. So, Kevin's I pronounced the S, but I think some Missourians mostly keep. Oh, so it's St. Louis, Missouri.
St. Louis. I've heard both, and I don't know. I'm assuming Kevin knows the.
But then Missouri people don't even say Missouri properly, do they? They say like Missouri. Yeah. So who knows what they?
Who knows? And we know because of my accent that I am not saying it correctly. So don't base any correct.
Yeah. But I mean, there were some pretty fun. That surprised me. The humor. I mean, there's a lot of comedy in it, be it dark comedy or whatever. Are you still there? Am I on my own? Hello, Kevin. Can you still see me? Has Carrie frozen, or am I the one that's out of this conversation? It's the problem with StreamYard is there's always a delay. So yeah, Carrie's frozen. So I'm here then. Right. Okay. Well, now she's gone. We can. Now I don't know what's etiquette. Do I hang around and wait for Carrie to come back, or should I leave and come back? Because I guess I'm broadcasting live on her channel without any. I can do anything. Oh my gosh, this is crazy. But anyway, I mean, okay, Carrie's not here, but I will talk a little bit about the comedy of it. I suppose it's a surprisingly amusing book. There was obviously dark comedy, I suppose, given the nature of it. I'm hoping Carrie's going to make it back because I want to talk a bit about some of the characters, which were quite interesting. I behaved myself, Carrie. Don't worry, I didn't do anything non-PG-13 while you were away. The integrity of your channel is intact. Don't worry. Absolute professionalism. I carried on as best I could.
I appreciate that, Mark. I'm sure you carried it. I think my hotspot, I had it sitting in the sun, and it got a little hot, so I
Your
had
hot
to
spot got hot.
my hot spot got hot. So you were talking about the exchange between um, Raymond and the reporter and how it was kind of very vanilla-ish. Earlier you talked about that. I I think that might have been intentional, and it was kind of maybe speaking to how naive Raymond seems to be. I mean, he is very aloof um, when it comes to relationships with people, and he's kind of set apart. And I kind of thought that was maybe a I don't know a way of I don't know, kind of a way of exploring that with Raymond's character.
Well, yeah,
Um,
because it does become part of the story later on when they find out, for example, that I don't know, I can't remember now, like he never kissed, he never even
yeah,
kissed what the girl he fell in love with,
Josie. Yeah,
Josie, yeah. So
yeah,
it was a bit weird. I mean, while you were off, I was actually talking a bit about the humor in the book, how it's quite humorous. It's got quite a lot of dark comedy to it, really, which surprised me.
yeah, yeah.
Especially
Um,
amongst probably I'm guessing he's probably one of your favorite characters as he is mine in terms of just how horrible he is. I'm
um,
talking, of course, the senator.
yeah, he is very um probably representative. I mean, I hate to say this, and you know me, I don't get like political on my channel, like as far as modern politics, 1963 all the way, but modern day not so much. I I do think he is representative of probably a lot of politicians now, in that he is a bit of a buffoon. He's inept, he's incompetent, and people behind the scenes are probably, pulling the strings. And of course, you know, little little spoiler here. So if you have not read the book or seen the films, go ahead and um, take your leave now, because I am going to spoil one of the biggest twists in the book. The person who is the master manipulator, who is the homegrown operative here in the United States, who is Raymond's handler, is his mother.
Big
And
surprise. I have to say that was like a whoa moment for me. So
yeah, I was glad I kept that secret because yeah, that's a big one. You know, so much of this book is kind of like taking things that are sacred and warping them. So, like, the first thing is the Medal of Honor. The Medal of Honor is, mostly awarded to people posthumously, at this point. So it is very, very unusual, um, for people to still be alive. And if they are alive and they receive the Medal of Honor, they have just gone above and beyond the call of duty. Sorry, there was a bug. But that is sacred. They're taking this mother son relationship that is, sacred. And then at the end, they even incorporate the assassin wearing a priest outfit. So I can't think of any more sacred things. And this book is like showing how all of that can be totally warped. And it's just so, you know, anathema to anything that most people would think.
well, I mean, of
These are
course,
just,
I mean, the other sacred things, I suppose, really are at the very end. Again, we're giving away loads of spoilers, but
yes,
it culminates in matricide and suicide.
yeah,
So, you
yeah.
know,
And they took it so much further in this book than the film did. And I know you haven't seen the film, but in the film, there's definitely a weird dynamic with the mother son relationship. But in the book, the author really delves into why the mother is this way and apparently she is the victim of sexual abuse as a child
Her father, yeah.
through her father. And, she still has this, love and attachment to her father. And when Raymond appears like her father or smiles like her father did, then they end up having this incestuous, relationship. It's while Raymond is under
Yeah,
hypnosis. I will
while he's
say that
playing
when
solitaire.
yeah, he's in that state. So it's nothing on his end for sure, but it just it's just all of these things that just give most people like a visceral reaction because it's just so against like every human decency.
I think that's the thing with the book. It does run the kind of whole gamut of like not just emotions but themes and topics. I mean, the whole biography, for example, of Senator Iceland is hysterical. His whole escapades while he's off in the North Pole or whatever. It's like some really kind of comedic moments. The things he gets up to there, and as a character, he does provide. Although he is, I mean, the thing is, how far is he, of course, manipulated by Mrs. Iceland as well? Raymond's mother. Which is because that's a whole weird relationship there in itself. But you're right. I think in some ways it was rather prophetic. Now I know you said you're quite happy to avoid yourself any allusions to modern politics, but I did highlight one thing because I did write like a note because I read it on the Kindle. And it said, she has introduced anti American feeling far more effective than any that could possibly have been initiated by the committee and their paid agents. The unanimous opinions of Europe is that Iceland symbolizes exactly the reverse of what America stands for and what we have learned to appreciate. Icelandism is the arch enemy of liberty and a disgrace to the name of America. I highlighted it and then wrote in a note, Trump. And the reason I did that, and I'm not making any judgment one way or the other,
Yeah.
but I think,
But
as I said
internationally
to
for
you,
sure.
well, I think, as I said to you, even if you support Trump or you don't support Trump, you cannot deny that the man is a very divisive figure and that, he is somebody who people make opinions about either very positively or very negatively, and therefore make those opinions about America as well. And I think it was very, yeah, somewhat prophetic, these kind of words, because I think there is an element, and I'm not afraid to say it. So these views are my own, not Carrie's. There is an element that of this caricature that Trump has become in Senator Iceland. So you know
Yeah.
or obviously without the political assassinations and all this kind of stuff. But you can
Yeah.
explain something to me, actually, because this was one thing I found just a little bit odd, was the way the book culminated with this plan. Because it was the presidential and vice presidential nominations, right?
Yes.
What was the point of shooting the presidential candidate? Surely it would have made more sense to have won the election, shoot the president, and then the vice president would be. That's what I didn't get. Why would you?
Because they weren't sure they would win the election. The only thing I can figure is they knew that this character, this Iceland character, was so divisive that they can't leave it up to chance that this person is going to win the election. And so this leaves them with the big photo op and the play on American hearts and minds. When Iceland is set up to hold his running mate, his dying running in his arms, and this is set to happen at a specific point in the speech, and so he gets the sound bite. That part is very modern in that these things are very scripted, and it's all about the sound bite, and it's all about the theatrics and the optics. It's not
Hmm.
necessarily about the reality of what is there. And Aaron is right. This is a caricature of the Joe McCarthy character.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
Icelandism is McCarthyism,
Yeah.
for sure. But yeah, that's what I can figure, Mark, is, this is the thing. She, the mother figure, our dear mother in this book, she can't leave it to chance that
Mm.
he's not the ticket won't win the election.
Mm-hmm.
And with this, it's a no-brainer. It kind of galvanizes public support. When you have that tragedy, when you have that assassination or terrorist attack or whatever it is, patriotism is everywhere. And
did the whole fake news angle strike you as also prophetic? How he was quite happy, like she fed him like made up figures all the time, and he was, to be honest, again, sorry, but I wouldn't be surprised if someone read this book before they went on their presidential candidacy.
well, I'm just gonna throw this out there. It kind of goes both ways, because we're starting to see that current politicians are not there, and somebody is scripting things, somebody is doing that, and the specter of communism is still there. What have we heard over the last 4 or 5 years on both sides of the aisle but connections to Russia, connections to China? We're still scared of this Chinese connection, so it's funny that we read this book now, Mark, because I do think you're right. There's so much in this book that is applicable
Yeah,
to modern times.
it resonates very well. I mean, you could see the whole book could be rewritten.
Yeah.
Like now, you add in things like Twitter and
Yeah.
TikTok or whatever, and it would fit in perfectly. You wouldn't bat an eyelid,
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's an extremely interesting and relevant read. Although it's 67, almost 70 years old, really. I suppose 65 or so years old. So yeah, it's very, very well worth anybody's time, I think. Regarding the films, though, Sinatra. Now, who is he? Is he Marco or is he Raymond?
He's Marco.
I thought he would be.
He's
And I'm
Marco.
guessing Denzel Washington is Marco.
Denzel Washington is Marco as well. And it's funny because in the film from 1962, Angela Lansbury is Raymond Shaw's mother, and she's only like 2 or 3 years older than Lawrence Harvey, who's playing her son. So it's kind of funny, but she does it so well. She's always had that look of being older. So it worked. And when I went back, because I watched both of the films before we came on, and it's evident to me that Meryl Streep, who reprises the role in the 2004 version, she definitely looked at Angela Lansbury's take on that. It's clear to me, but she did such a good job. She knocked it out of the park in 62. But yeah, that film, if you watch it, there's not much music in the 1962 version. Like, it's almost like no soundtrack to the film, which I thought was really interesting. And it's something that I didn't notice until I watched the 2004 version, because at the convention at the end, it's playing some really bizarre music. It's just the convention music, but it was just really weird, because you've got the assassin setting up, and this just very distracting music is happening. And I just thought that, I was like, wow, in the 62 there was like hardly any music, but it worked. Like it would just, the storyline was so riveting, and you were into it. I will say, in the film there's quite a few little bizarre conversation exchanges that, when I saw the film initially, not having read the book, I just thought, like, this is weird. Like, this is something out of the Twilight Zone. Is this Eugenie character, who was played by Janet Leigh, another great actress there? She was saying this stuff that made me think that she might be one of the communist operatives, because she mentions.
I thought that reading the book. I thought she was going to be the handler. Or something. Yeah. I absolutely thought she was put in Marco's path deliberately. I was convinced.
Yeah. So, well, after having read the book, some of that conversation that I was so like suspicious of and weirded out about was in the book. So that kind of made more sense after I'd read the book. But yeah, you are kind of entering this bizarro world in this book. And I loved that the film in 62, they keep a lot of the original stuff from the book. So the men, while they're being trained and brainwashed and drugged and whatever else is going on, they're sitting around yawning, and here's all of the Chinese and Soviet cadre there, and in their minds they're watching a garden club talk about hydrangeas. They've their flight has been grounded, and so they're waiting for the next flight, waiting for the storm to blow over, and they're in a hotel lobby, listening to this lady about hydrangeas. And it's funny because in the book the the Chinese mess with them a little bit and make their cigarettes out of yak dung.
Yeah.
They're all sitting around, smoking these cigarettes. And in the film, they kept that, and the guy goes, "Yeah, it tastes good like a cigarette should," So it's funny. But yeah, so there was definitely some humor to it, and I liked that the 62 version was um, pretty in keeping with that. There were a few scenes, though. If you watch the film, Mark, you'll notice that Sinatra, during the part where he's interrogating Raymond, and he's got the 4 stack of Queen of Diamonds,
Yeah.
he's a little bit out of focus,
Mm-hmm.
but Raymond is clear as a bell. When they go to him, he's clear, and Marco's out of focus. It's because apparently Frank Sinatra was notorious for this. I didn't know this. He would nail it on the first take, and every take after that was just worse. So they didn't have the camera set up like exactly right on the first take.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit fuzzy when you look at him. So they ended up having to keep it that way. And people thought they'd done it intentionally because they thought we were seeing Marco through Raymond's eyes. He's
Mm-hmm.
this deranged person. They're trying to break all of these, connections that the plotters have forged in his mind. And so yeah, it's some cool little elements to the film like that. All right, let's see what we've got. We've got some stuff in the comments here. Stateless society. Stephen always has to take it to the extreme. I don't know. Whilst the faces might change, politics doesn't. That is very true. That is very true. We have plenty of political dynasties for sure. Yeah, a lot to consider there. I did like that the old film is. I mean, it's an older film, and I don't know. I have an attachment to black and white films. I don't know about you, Mark, but
Oh,
what do
I
you
love
think
them.
about? Yeah,
Yeah, I love
there's
them.
just something about them. When Senator Jordan is shot in the 62 film, he's in the kitchen, like he's making a sandwich, getting some milk. It's very,
Yeah.
it's like midnight or something. Raymond walks in to shoot him with this silencer, and he's like, what's going on? And he shoots him through the carton of milk.
Yeah.
So it's not all bloody and gory, but it's just as scary. Like, to me, it's almost even more eerie how it's shot.
I have to
They
say
had
that whole episode upset me though. Because I
yeah,
liked Jordan, I liked Josie, and I
yeah.
think the fact that he had to go through with that, nothing has changed in the film. So
So
he does kill her as well. Because I would imagine
yeah, in the
in a Hollywood film they
62
might change it.
no, in the 62 version, he kills her as well, and he just callously walks over her body. She comes down to see what's going on with her dad, and she's like, "No, Raymond," and he shoots her. She falls, and then we see the camera angle from the back. We don't see his face. We just see him walk over her body very, very callously. Um,
Mm.
if the two film adaptations were set in the same universe, someone who is a congressman's aide in the first film could have been a senator in the second film, given the longevity of American politics.
Very true.
Yeah. What's interesting, the 2004 version, they completely changed a lot of that. And I'm kind of going to spoil this movie for you as well. But in that movie, Raymond's not the trained assassin.
Oh,
Guess who
okay.
it is?
Marco.
Yeah.
Mm,
Even
that's
though
an interesting
Marco
twist.
is having these dreams and things, and it's more graphic. The brainwashing and the testing, all of that is
What's
very
the
invasive.
what's the conflict? Iraq or something or?
Yes, but not really.
Okay.
So essentially, there's a corporation
Okay.
that is involved, and so yeah, they're involved in some it's basically like military industrial complex sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's this chemical company, and they're involved in. They're called Manchurian Global, so that's where
Okay.
that comes in. But yeah, that company's involved, and yeah, that one's a bit different. The Eugenie character in that, she is actually an FBI agent undercover who is supposed to keep tabs on Marco,
Uh-huh.
and he finds out, and they end up kind of working together. And I will say one thing that I did kind of like in the 2004 version is that Marco is able to survive. So he is about to shoot himself after he has done the deed and shot the conspirators, which basically Raymond at that point is running for. I think he's also the vice presidential candidate in the 2004 version, kind of similar to this what Senator Iceland was supposed to do in the first one. So
Right.
he's the vice presidential candidate, if I'm
And
remembering
is
correctly.
he still a Medal of Honor winner and stuff like
He
this?
is. All of that is true. So that's what kind of propelled him
Politics.
into stardom, I guess. And
And who
he,
plays him?
oh gosh, Lev Schreiber.
Oh, I
I
know.
don't know how
Yeah,
to
yeah,
pronounce. You
yeah.
know who I'm talking about? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
He
know.
kind of looks.
Mhm.
He kind of looks like Lawrence Harvey a little bit. And some of his
Yeah,
like mannerisms and stuff, he kind of
yeah,
looked like
yeah,
him. So I thought that was kind of cool.
yeah.
But he kind of recognizes what's going on as well, and he looks at Denzel Washington and kind of like shakes his head like, I'm going to give you the clean shot. Just go ahead and take me and my mother out. So Denzel Washington is able to one bullet take both of them down, and he's about to shoot himself, and the FBI agent shoots him in the shoulder so he doesn't kill himself. And then the government ends up doing a huge investigation, and it comes out what this company was doing, and they take the whole company down, and so he's able to make it out alive.
Mm.
But one thing I liked about the 62 version was, they treated the Medal of Honor at the end with I think good reverence for it, because some people here in America would get really upset about the fact that they're using the Medal of Honor like it's a pawn, and so at the end I really liked how it kind of says like Raymond has earned the Medal of Honor. It kind of
Right.
came full circle, like that he did something to save his country. And in the film version, they actually have Frank Sinatra read a Medal of Honor account
Uh-huh.
of
Uh-huh.
someone who, he killed X number of the enemy. He had, his leg blown off. He even though he was, going with one leg, he, ended up saving his comrade. He just goes through this little blurb that's in a book he has, because of course he has all these books in his house about this Medal of Honor winner, and then he basically off the cuff creates a little blurb for Raymond, because he says,
Mm.
the people will never know, the damage that was done to him personally and what he ended up having to do, which saved his country.
I know it's
essentially.
interesting how Condon gave like a kind of history of the Medal of Honor though, because
Yeah,
it wasn't
very cool.
like it was interesting how like it wasn't that big of a deal like when it started. It seemed
No,
like
and
during
this
the Indian Wars they were just handing them out to everybody and anybody, and they
Yeah,
had to
and the
like
Civil War. Yeah, the Civil
yeah,
War was rife with that because I used to work at a Civil War battlefield, and we had so many Medal of Honor winners from the particular battlefield that I worked at. And I mean, you basically got a Medal of Honor during the Civil War for capturing a battle flag,
oh, I thought you
and
were gonna say just for turning
essentially,
up.
no, no, essentially, someone could have been killed and dropped a battle flag, and if you picked it up, you got a Medal of Honor. So yeah, during the Civil War was definitely a lot different.
We have our own version. Have you cut out again? Still there? Oh dear. Looks like I'm on my own again. I guess it's the hazards of filming in your car. Apologies, everybody. I'm sure she'll be back. If anyone's still watching, of course, I might just be sitting here talking to myself. So, uh, yeah, well, there's 3 watching. So I don't know if it's still the same 3. So is Carrie coming back? Maybe. Can see anyone watching this that I am much better when I'm part of a double act. I don't have a very good solo career. Dear. Well, it's quite tantalizing, the whole wheel turning around there. So, yeah. But no, I do feel like I want to go and watch these films now. It's another thing I want to talk about as well, which Carrie hasn't mentioned, but I'm going to try and wait for her because I don't know whether she knows about it or not. So it'd be quite interesting to see. Yeah, exactly, Aaron. You're quite right. Yeah, I think it was during the Civil War and the Indian Wars, and you're absolutely right. He talks about that in the when he starts talking about the Medal of Honor in the book, and then how they had to kind of backtrack and kind of retroactively remove these people from the Medal of Honor role. So yeah, I suppose it's a bit harsh if you're one of those people who won it and thought, well, you won it fair and square at the time, and then of course now we've got 2 carries. So,
I don't
uh,
know what's going on there, but
yeah, Aaron was just talking about the Medal of Honor being given to some of the troops that took part in the massacre at Wounded Knee. And I was
yeah,
thinking, it was a bit harsh, perhaps. I don't, but then I guess when the amendment was put in place about the Medal of Honor, probably most of those people who had it and then had it retroactively like downgraded weren't alive, probably. So they might not, because I
yeah,
mean, it would be a bit harsh if you think you'd done it fair and square and you didn't. But you know, we because we have our own one in the UK. I don't know if you know, but we have one called the Victoria Cross, and it's also
right,
quite, but it has kind of a cool history because I'm sure Aaron will correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if it still is, but it was came about as a result of the Crimean War. And it was made from the metal for the Victoria Cross was made from the melted down Russian guns that was taken at Sevastopol. And with the I don't know if it's Charge Light Brigade or something different. I don't know my Crimean history that much, but it's pretty cool because there's only a certain amount of this metal around, so they
yeah.
can't be too generous in giving it out. So I don't know how many winners there have been. So yeah,
And Stephen, as a Gulf War veteran, I don't believe any were given out for that conflict. I could be wrong. Thank you for your service, Stephen. First of all, but yeah, I don't think so either. I could be wrong as well, but I don't.
well, Google is in front of me.
Do a Google search for us, Mark. Figure that out. I don't
I
think
hope
so.
if
I
I spell
think
honor correctly. List of post-war,
they
post-Vietnam.
gave some for Somalia in the
Yeah,
90s.
Somalia, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it. Yeah, it seems post-Vietnam. They pretty much were from 93. So there's 2 in Somalia. Quite a few in Afghanistan, actually. Quite a few, actually.
That's probably from the post 9/11.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
but it's like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22.
Yeah.
And then the second Gulf War, there were a few as well.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, what is Operation Inherent Resolve? Okay. Yeah.
Is that another terrorist, like
Yeah,
anti-terrorist
it's something again that
action?
was against ISIL, and he rescued 30. Thomas Paine rescued 70 Iraqi prisoners. Yeah. So, how many times has been? How many? Over there. 3,525 have been awarded it. So, compare it to Victoria Crosses, 1,358. So, but then
Aaron
oh,
has
they do
some.
still make it, yeah.
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 Very
I mean, we
cool.
have one action where 11 were awarded in one go, and that was probably political, maybe, but yeah, because it's like, they are quite closely guarded, and yet in one battle, I'm talking about, not one war, but in one battle, they gave out 11. I don't know if you've ever seen the film Zulu.
I have not.
But 11 of the defenders of this station won the Victoria Cross in that one action. So,
Very neat.
but I do have to raise something with you.
Okay.
Going back to Richard Condon and stuff. I found this out. I didn't mention it while we read the book because I didn't know it. I found it out while I was reading afterwards and forgot to mention it to you. But did you know, apparently, he was like, he had plagiarism charges levied against him for the Manchurian Candidate.
Really? I did not know this, Mark. What in the world?
It's the weirdest thing going. And I think we might have to read this book together to find out how close it might be.
Okay, I'm game. What is this book?
So, I'll read you the Wikipedia information first. In 1998, a Californian software engineer noticed several paragraphs in the Manchurian Candidate that appeared nearly identical to portions of the celebrated 1934 novel I, Claudius by Robert Graves. Now, is that not like one of the strange? I mean, I've not read it.
I've not read it either, but
isn't that like a weird novel to be plagiarizing from, especially whole passages?
Yeah, that's what. I wonder what passages. Do you know?
I don't know. That's why I really want to read it, because it says she wrote about apparent plagiarism on her website, but her discovery went unnoticed by most of the world until Adair Lara, a longtime San Francisco Chronicle staff writer, wrote a lengthy article about the accusation in 2003. Reprinting the paragraphs in question, she also solicited the opinion of a British forensic linguist who concluded that Condon had unquestionably plagiarized at least two paragraphs. Maybe it's not a reason to read the whole book, but I do want to read this book anyway. I've always wanted to read it. At least two paragraphs of Graves' work. By this time, however, more than 7 years had passed since Condon's death, and Lara's article also failed to generate any literary interest outside the Chronicle. Apparently, in Some Angry Angel, the book that followed The Manchurian Candidate, Condon makes a direct reference to Graves. In a long,
Mm.
convoluted passage on page 25, Condon reflects on mistresses and their relationship, a peripheral one to the reader, to Graves's writings about major male deities, major female deities, etc., etc. But I knew it was about the Emperor Claudius, and I suppose I don't know whether it's the mother stuff that could be
Yeah.
there, or the political stuff. But I am very curious as to see what could be seen as being lifted from that book. So
We definitely need to read this. Well, we were at SPQR together, so we've got a Rome connection already. So we need to do this. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
It doesn't, and this is going to sound horrible coming from a librarian, because we're supposed to be the standard bearers for copyright. But that doesn't change how I feel about this book.
it didn't for
Yeah.
me because I think, to be honest, it could have been a mistake as well. Like
Yeah.
he could just be influenced by it. If he obviously read a lot of Graves and 2 paragraphs. I mean, it's such a weird thing. Why would he plagiarize it? And also a book that
Right.
was like, very popular at the time he would have been writing as well. Still like in the conscious memory of people. I'm sure there are reasons. Because it doesn't seem obviously. Graves is not writing about he's not stolen the plot,
Right.
and that to me is the kind of the real key part of this book, I suppose. But I did just find it very interesting because I thought it doesn't seem that there's any relation
Yeah.
at all between these 2 works, even though, as I said, I haven't read one, but it just
Well, I mean,
seemed weird.
political assassinations, Aaron was saying, like, given the amount of political assassinations and conspiring, he can definitely see the connection. And I
Yeah,
can definitely see the connection, but the fact that it was like word for word, pretty much, it sounds like a few
yeah.
paragraphs, that would have to be very strategically chosen, I think, to fit probably in this. But, you know, and this is just a theory. Maybe Richard Condon is kind of like myself and JFK. He was known to do this a good bit. Maybe he just kept a notebook of ideas and just kind of like a brain dump sort of thing. And he may have also wrote down quotes and things that he liked. And maybe he saw it on if you have all of that stuff kind of jumbled together, you know, and apparently he was a fan of Graves. So, I mean, you know, it's possible that it was unintentional or.
But I do love it when books that you think would have no relation to each other reference.
Yeah.
So, like, one of the other I read this month, I actually finished it today. I should have finished it earlier, but I finished it today. Edmond Rostand's Cyrano de Bergerac, the play Bergerac, Cyrano de Bergerac, and it's quoted in The Manchurian Candidate.
Oh, that's weird timing.
Which is really weird because I knew I was going to be reading it this month, but I hadn't started it when I read The Manchurian Candidate, and I'm reading along, and it's quite funny because I did highlight it as well. Probably not too interesting for people who haven't read it, but I thought, oh, that's really, it's so funny. Again, I wouldn't expect, why should 2 books I'm reading this month, why should one recognize, reference the other one? Where was it? He wouldn't talk to Raymond about the murders in the nightmares. Rosie, Eugenie Rose, my wild Arab nose. Oh, what a gorgeous nose. Cyrano, Act 1, Scene 1. Pedantic, does not Aristophanes mention a mythologic monster called Hippocampelephantocamelos, taken from Cyrano de Bergerac? And then, of course, when I read it, I was like, this was in The Manchurian Candidate.
And I think that's something that is referenced in the film. Like, there's a reference in the film to one play, and then when there's the exchange between Eugenie Rose and Marco, there is a question of, are you Arabic? They throw that out there. So, and I think people having not read the book, especially when they saw that in the film, they thought this film was bizarre. Like, this
Mm.
film is very bizarre because I just did a quick, like, little search for the film just to see, like, what was said about it, and, um, I came across, like, quite a few comments of people who thought some of the dialogue and stuff was just kinda out there, but I loved it. I love stuff like that.
Oh
Makes
yeah,
makes it more intriguing.
oh, yeah. I mean, to me, the I knew pretty much. I knew I was gonna like this book once he started talking about Captain Marco's. At the time, he was captain. Then he was major, or major. I don't know, but eventually Colonel Marco's relationship to books, as you already mentioned before. But the moment he started talking about how he had this habit of like letting people pick out books at random, wasn't it, or something, and he'd have them like saved up and then shipped wherever he was, so they would be like on all sorts of different topics. And I thought, yeah, I like this Marco bloke, and I'm gonna like this book. So
Yeah,
you
for
know,
sure, for sure. Um, yeah,
I
you
think
you really need to watch that film though, Mark. You do.
yeah, I
You need
will.
to carve out
I
some
will.
time. I think it's worth it. Even knowing what's going to happen. Some of the I think sometimes some things are lost in a lot of new films with all the CGI and the
Special effects and all that.
explosions and all of the special. I mean, all that's cool. That's all cool. Don't get me wrong, but some of the nuance I think that these old films bring to things, like, when we're seeing Senator Iceland first confront the Secretary of, I think it was Secretary of Defense, maybe, about the 207 known communists,
Yeah,
right
yeah,
now,
yeah.
and whatever,
The
when that,
89 known communists, the
yeah,
23 known,
kept
the way it goes.
changing
The
every
one
day.
known communist.
Can you
But
give me a number that I can remember? That's what he kept asking her. I need a number I can remember. So when he's, you know, starting out with these charges, you'll see Angela Lansbury in the room. She's in the room now, and this is a press conference. So there's TVs and stuff set up so she can see what this looks like on camera. And she's just sitting there watching the camera. It's like, if you're watching the film, you've got to know. Like, there's so many little, hints and things that this lady is obsessive. She's obsessive. She's controlling. Something is wrong here. But they played it so well. And the sweating that these actors do in this film. It's funny, the interaction between the one of the Soviet handlers and one of the Chinese handlers, because they'll get into arguments, and they're very guarded and on edge, and they don't know what the other's going to do, and it's all over their face, and they're sweating, but then they'll make a joke, and then they're not sure if they can laugh or not, so it's a really funny thing to see that play out on camera, because we read about it and it was funny to read, but like when it's playing out on camera, it's really cool to see. So I think you'll like it.
No, I'll definitely check it out.
All right. Well, did you have anything else?
Yes,
Okay.
and I think you should say it because you said it to me, and I don't think it was in a private moment, but it was that you said that this book probably makes it into your list, right?
Yeah. I'd say this book is top 5 for me. Top 5
of the
of all
year
time.
or all time?
All time. I know that's a bold statement, Mark.
It's a bold
I understand
statement.
that.
I can see why. Given your interests, for sure, it fits in completely. I'm not sure it's, of course, top 5 for me of all time, but it's definitely top 20, I would say, for me of all time.
Fair enough. I think that's solid.
Yeah, it was just such a pleasant surprise. Well, pleasant.
Yeah. Oh, the books we read together.
I didn't see, it kept me guessing, and I didn't see the twists. I didn't see them coming. I like to kind of sometimes pride myself that I often do see these things coming, and I didn't. even though looking back on it, it seems like it's a little obvious.
Yeah,
But I
that's what
dismissed
makes
it.
it the best. That's what
Yeah.
makes it the best is that when
Oh,
you get
you
to that
idiot.
point, you're like, "Yes, of
Oh,
course, of course."
yeah. I mean, because he almost tells you like several times just how horrible his mother is, you know, and so it shouldn't be a surprise, but it's like, you know, but he does it so well. Like the
Yeah.
meeting in the taxi or the car, and you know, the hand that smashes their hand, and then of course when he meets, he's like, "What happened to your hand, mother?" "Oh, I had a," and you think, "Oh my god, it's her." So
Oh gosh, his dearly beloved and hated mother is very
yeah,
reminiscent of the Queen of Diamonds,
yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
definitely.
Actually, I think they did a different reveal in the film. I think the film is a little different when we find out. I believe in the film, when we really know for sure that she's the American operator,
Mm.
is right before the party that she has at her house, the costume party, and
Uh-huh.
she's meeting with Raymond, and she says, "I'm gonna take this card." So he's playing solitaire, and she said, "I'm gonna take this card. It could get us into a bit of trouble tonight." And then she just walks out of the room, and you're like, "Oh my gosh,
Oh
it's
my god.
her."
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was great. That was great. It's one of those that film too, the way it ends. I mean, it ends very similarly to the book. It's just kind of one of those endings where you just kind of like sit there because you've really been through a roller coaster ride that's given you something to think about, for sure.
Wonderful. Yeah, well,
All
thanks.
right.
Thanks for letting me read it with you. I really enjoyed it. It was great.
Always a pleasure, Mark. And I'll get a copy of I Claudius, and
I'll have to get one too.
you let we'll do that at some point for sure.
Super. Super. Cool.
Thank you for reading with me. Thank you for chatting with me, and thank you to anybody who joined in and watched. So we'll see you guys next time.
Bye, everyone.